frequent strange humanoid alien encounters in Canada in 1968, greys, blues, and dwarf aliens. The year 1968 was marked by a big spike in UFO sightings around the world, but one particular place that saw a wave of reports of UFOs and alien encounters was Canada. Now, most of you know I'm also Canadian, and at the time I lived in Canada, there was only 10 million people there. Now there's about 30. So, humanoid alien sightings in Canada in 1968. In that year, Canada experienced an unprecedented surge in the history of the country and an intense increase in reports of strange flying objects and their bizarre crews. Let's remember Canada is much bigger than the United States in land area, and also the fact that it's not very populated, it's sparsely populated. Now, this wave began in April in Vancouver when two eyewitnesses who were sitting in their car near Whitecliff Park when they noticed a very large, bright object flying low over the trees and gradually descending. Shortly after the UFO disappeared behind the trees, a small luminous man came out of the forest, moving with very fast and precise movements and glowing so brightly that it was impossible to see any clothes or features of his face. The strange little creature finally noticed two people looking in his direction, then turned towards the forest, quickly disappeared behind the trees, and shortly after that, a bright object flew up into the sky, accelerating sharply and disappearing from view. A few days later, in Chicoutimi, Quebec, a woman named Tremblay was walking down the road to a restaurant when she saw a strange object hovering in the sky. From the bottom of the object, a cone-shaped beam came out, reaching the ground. According to the woman, a beam of light reached her, and she closed her eyes at the sudden blinding brightness, but it lasted only a few moments. When she opened her eyes, she found that the object had disappeared and was nowhere to be seen. The stunned woman decided to go home, but was even more shocked when she saw, quote, a small humanoid creature with deep blue eyes, dressed in a strange-looking seamless white jumpsuit, and, quote, near her house. According to the witness, as soon as the tiny man realized that he had been noticed, he vanished into thin air right before her eyes. Over the next few months, similar humanoids wearing white overalls were seen in the same area by other witnesses. In June, in Sarnia, Ontario, a 10-year-old girl was walking outside her house in the evening when she suddenly saw a luminous humanoid with a bald head and no facial features, no pronounced nose, mouth, and eyes, sitting on the bench near their garage. She claimed that when he stood up, he was almost 2 meters high, and that she was frightened by his appearance and began to call for Dad. At the sound of the girl's voice, the humanoid immediately disappeared without a trace. A little later that June, two women were walking near a parking lot in Laval de Rapide in Quebec late at night when they saw some strange object eclipsing the full moon in the sky. As they peered into the strange anomaly, they could see two small humanoid beings levitating through the air and approaching directly towards them. As they approached, the women saw that they had black skin and were dressed in tight-fitting one-piece suits. When the creatures reached the ground, they took out a tool that looked like a small pitchfork from somewhere and began to dig the ground with them, ignoring the astonished women. What the creatures did next remained unknown, as both women ran away from there in panic. In June 1968, the wave of observations continued, and on July 2nd, a resident of the settlement of Alexis de Montcalm in Quebec saw a group of about 20 tiny green men with pointed noses and hats in the shape of mushrooms pass by her house at night. On the same day, two constables from St. Thomas, Quebec, noticed two little people with oversized heads. The growth of the little men the height was about 60 centimeters. The creatures ran across the drainage ditch, and when the police gave chase, it disappeared into thin air. On July 26, two boys biking near the airport in Rivière-du-Loup in Quebec said they saw two gray-skinned humanoids, a little less than a meter tall, run out from behind an aircraft hangar and disappear into the bushes. And 2 days later, on July 28, 5 teenagers from Stanislas de Courstade in Quebec saw 2 UFOs with red glow land near them. When the young people went there to look, they encountered a humanoid about 120 centimeters tall, that's about over a yard, over 3 feet tall, with a large head, no noticeable neck, large round eyes, a flat nose, and brown skin that was wrinkled, covered with scabs and bumps. They claimed that when they shone a flashlight on the creature, the strange creature staggered and back towards the barn, and then knocked on the window, making a mooing sound like a cow. And then it disappeared into the night, and they saw a flying UFO, they said. In the same month, strange humanoid creatures and UFOs were also reported from other regions, and in some cases eyewitnesses even claiming that they were abducted. One such story comes from an Ontario woman who claimed to have been taken directly from her front yard. She saw a large glowing disc descend and 3 humanoid aliens emerge from it and drag her onto their ship. She was placed on a floating bed and operated on, opening her brain in an attempt to insert a tracking device in her head, and then healed the wound with a wave of incomprehensible device. It's not clear what these creatures looked like, as this story, first published in Michael D. Meck's book Mass UFO Sightings, does not provide a proper description. In August, oddities became even more. In Vancouver, a group of teenage boys who were playing with air guns at the Shaughnessy golf course noticed a metal object the size of a car that looked like a flying saucer on the grass. Curious children walked up to it and tapped on its surface, and then one of them saw a pale blue humanoid nearby in white overalls with a red sash around the waist. Quote, the boy said to him, "My name is Kim," and put his right hand over his heart as a greeting. The creature raised its palms up in response and made a sound, but it sounded like it had no tongue at all. Then it extended its right hand and nodded at the boy to do the same with the left, and then they put their palms on top of each other as if for comparison. Their palms turned out to be very similar in shape, only the alien had very pale skin. Then the boy heard a voice in his head saying, "Would you like to pray?" And the creature bowed and extended its arms, pointing palms down at the boy. The boy was a little embarrassed, and to make his friends, who were literally stunned by the scene, laugh, he gestured towards the air gun in his right pocket. The alien seemed to sense this and seemed to take it as a threat, and the teenager had to apologize, explain that it was just an air pistol and not real. The alien seemed to understand this, and the boy then said a few more words and then waved to the alien, and the alien waved back. Then the boy went to his friends and they left the area. End quote. Also in August, in Montreal, Quebec, 3 men named Guy Garnett, Jean-Guy Girouard, and Carol Marquis were returning home from well, they're not men. Carol obviously is a woman. Were returning home from a fair when they saw a creature about a meter high, similar to a monkey, but with a disproportionately large head. The creature moved very awkwardly, as if it was a great difficulty for him, but when he got to the lantern, he very dexterously jumped on it and then made a very long jump to the other side of the street and disappeared from sight. On August 28th, a group of school children in Colerain, Quebec, saw a strange creature lurking in a cemetery. It has been described as looking like 120 centimeters tall human with a bald head, a thick black beard, and rough scaly red skin similar to that of a lizard. This creature was seen by school children for 3 days, and on the 4th day it boarded a blue, white, red flying saucer, which soared into the sky, leaving behind a column of thick smoke. This strange smoke, in addition to the school children, was seen by several other adults, whom the children called in order to believe them. On September 14, 3 young girls in Drummondville that's in Quebec, saw a little man in a coat and hat moving around with robot-like movements. When he noticed the girls, a grimace of intense fright appeared on his face, and then the little man just vanished into thin air. The next day, the same girls noticed the same shorty again. This time it happened from a circle of red light and was wearing a dark blue jumpsuit. Then the dwarf again made his strange robotic walk between the tree and again suddenly disappeared, leaving behind strange footprints. On September 21st, two different girls saw a creature they named Martian on the roof of their school in Coaticook, Quebec. The creature had a green face with no nose, mouth, or hair and emitted sparks as it moved. On September 28, a family from Asbest, Quebec, saw a green rectangle in the sky, from which a yellow-orange disc flew out, from which several humanoids then emerged, which floated in the air around the disc before returning to the ship and flying away. A similar object was seen by several other witnesses in the area. Now, why during the course of 1968 was it in Canada that there was such a high concentration of encounters with mysterious humanoid beings? Were any of these cases related to each other, and what were these entities? Were they aliens or interdimensional aliens? And if so, what did they want and why 1968? And all this, to put it mildly, is very confusing. And this is on Infinity Explorers by Anne Shrivastava. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.